From under the Golden Dome in Charleston, this is the West Virginia Capitol Report.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Capitol Report Show. I'm Bill Laird along with co-host Dave Perry, and we have a great show lined up for you today. And David, we've had an opportunity to talk to some mayors and some city officials and some larger cities and municipalities across the state of West Virginia. But today's show, we get to talk to a mayor, a hardworking mayor, full-time mayor, it seems as if, for this great city of Montgomery, the Honorable Greg Ingram. Mayor, welcome to the Capitol Report Show.
Thank you.
Again, COVID-19, the pandemic, is on everybody's minds throughout the state of West Virginia, and I know it's bound to have been a bit of a challenge for the city of Montgomery. Tell us a little bit about the impacts and effects of COVID-19 and how you all have dealt with it in the city of Montgomery.
Well, Bill, initially when back in March or April, we had to put the city of Montgomery in under state of emergency, and we instituted a curfew citywide. And most folks were going by the rules. Most folks were staying home, but there were a few people that just didn't get the message or didn't understand the severity of it. So we had to take additional actions, and it was primarily folks that stayed out all night long and would go to our Go Mart and different stores, and then after they were in there all night, then Grandma would come in the morning to get milk, and we just felt like it was better to shut the city down, and so that was one of the things that we did to try to handle COVID. It's been a real challenge for everyone. The city hall is still on partial shutdown. We still take businesses, but social distancing and masks and those type of things are required to come into City Hall. So it's been the same challenge for the small communities that has been for the larger ones. I think the thing for smaller communities, you can control it a little more because everybody knows everybody, and everyone respects one another's safety and their health, and they try to go with the rules. But the few that didn't, we had to go under state of emergency, and I just pray to God that we all get through this.
Absolutely. And again, impact on retail businesses, I'm sure that's been difficult. Certainly has impacted and affected the restaurant businesses nationwide. Have you had any businesses gone out of business as a result of the pandemic, or have they seemed to hold up okay?
We did lose a few businesses that went out. We have one business that's really struggling. They went into business, anytime there's legislation, as you know very well, Bill, there's always a loophole or something that somebody forgot to think about. We have one business that started their business in January, right before the COVID. So to get CARES Act funding, get CARES Act help, you had to have you had to show loss from last year. Well, they didn't have a tax return for last year. So up until this date, they still haven't received any COVID help because they don't have a last year's tax form. I understand there's a new program coming out now to help those folks. We did have a restaurant that went out of business primarily just due to COVID. All of our businesses shut down initially for 60 days. Not all of them, but majority of them did. Everyone reverted to drive-throughs rather than just like they did in the city, rather than having people come in and sit down and eat. We're slowly getting back to normal, slowly starting to open things back up, but even at that, you're at half capacity. You have to tape off tables. You can only have patrons at every other table in a restaurant. So it's affected the small communities, hit us really hard, and we certainly have been hit by it, but probably, you think about it, probably not as hard as some of the larger municipalities, because they have more, they rely on that B&O tax from restaurants more than the small ones do. So it's certainly affected all of us in different ways, and we've all had to be very aggressive to try to deal with it.
And again, the word resilience seems to come to mind. Folks have we're kind of all in it together, and working with the city in cooperation with public health needs. Pretty important stuff.
I know that, Mayor, you're under home rule. How has home rule assisted with the COVID crisis where you're concerned, or has it?
Well, we just received home rule right before COVID. In fact, I think it was January when we were approved for home rule. It has helped some, Dave, in the 1% sales tax. Now, it doesn't kick in until July, so we haven't received our first payment yet, but I'm sure that will replace a little bit of the B&O loss, which we reduced B&O taxes to obtain that 1%. There's some other issues there, Montgomery being split by 2 counties. There's some other issues that I think home rule will certainly be a big plus for us because each end of town goes under different health departments. So there's different rules for one end of town and there is the other end of town. And to bring that into harmony, we're working on some things maybe to go back to the home rule board and say, if we have 2 health departments that have different rules, we want the whole city to go by the most stringent or something of that nature. And
Right.
I think that's the purpose of home rule, is to help the legislature understand that these problems are out here. If I'm not mistaken, there's 7 other cities that are split by counties that have the same problems. Back a while back, the biggest problem in Montgomery was you could smoke in one end of town, but you couldn't in the other. So the bar owners were complaining, hey, they can have smokers and we can't. But those are the little things that home rule has done to help us. And as far as COVID, other than the tax, I don't know that we've had time to react to come up with any rules that would affect the pandemic as a way you would think. But I'm sure we'll learn from this and probably come up with something in the future. So any other pandemics, hopefully to God it's nothing like this, we'll have something that we can address it.
I know Senator Laird talked about retail business. And of course, Montgomery is fortunate to have one of the premier men's shop in the Kanawha Valley, and that's Byron's. It's been there for years, not to...
Absolutely.
But I know in talking with him, he had talked about the amount of dollars that he had lost relative to proms, graduations, weddings, and so forth. And it was up into the thousands.
Absolutely.
So I think he's recouping this fall with that. But as I said, it appears to be the premier men's shop in the Kanawha Valley.
In the entire Kanawha Valley. And you're right, Byron is a real trooper. I love to go in there because he's quick with a joke. He's quick to pick on you and take your credit card. But I love Byron's. I love his business and what he does. And there are people that come from all over the state of West Virginia.
Yes.
Just to visit Byron's because he takes such good care of his customers. But it did have an effect on him. It had a drastic effect with the schools and as you said, no tuxedo rentals and those type things. But he's a real trooper. He's hung in there.
Right.
Mayor, again, the challenges for municipal governments, boy, what a long list of things that include. But one thing that I know is, I think, consistent concern among municipalities in the state of West Virginia, and that is, the problem of dealing with dilapidated buildings and structures. And again, the beauty of a community, the physical appearance, that has an awful lot to do with attracting, new business and commerce to an area, people wanting to move into an area and those types of things. And I suspect, with some cities you have issues concerning absentee ownerships of commercial buildings that perhaps have been owned for, many, many years and those types of things. But I think in Montgomery you all are trying to get your arms around the whole issue of dilapidated buildings and trying to clean up certain areas within the community. If you could tell us a little bit about dilapidated building structures from the mayor's point of view and what progress we're making in that area.
Well, Bill, that's a great question. Property rights in America is probably one of the strongest rights you have, and we as municipal leaders or state leaders or whatever, we have to we have to respect those rights, because if you own something, it's yours and you have a right to it. And as you mentioned, where the problem sets in is when you have people that are irresponsible and move away and let their property fall into a dilapidated state. It is absolutely probably one of the number one issues that I think that the legislature of the state of West Virginia should address from a municipality standpoint. We had the rule where right of first refusal, that municipalities could go to a tax sale, and if you adopted all the rules that you had right of first refusal to purchase the property in your municipality. I went after that, and we put all those rules in place, and guess what? We had it 6 months and there was a sunset clause, and it went away. I think the legislature needs to revisit that, that if it's a property that is a problem, that municipality is going to know it. And if they have right of first refusal at a tax sale, they can purchase that property because obviously the property owner, if he's defunct on his taxes, he doesn't want it anyway. But what happens now is you'll have a land company come in and buy that property sight unseen. They just go to tax sales and buy them. Then they let them sit there. So now you're into another year of this property that it's under a new ownership. One of the other big problems that I've noticed too is if we raise a building that's on a person's property because of taxes or whatever the reason is, if it goes to a tax sale, my lien is erased. And but if they sell it, they have to pay me my money. And I say my money, it would be the municipality. But if it goes to a tax sale, your lien is waived. That needs to be addressed by the legislature. I think those liens need, the person that bids on those taxes at the tax sale needs to know there's X dollars of liens and you have to pay that also. So I think dilapidated structures are something that the state, it needs to be addressed at the state level for all municipalities, large or small, it doesn't matter. I've often said, you know, we have so many buildings that small municipalities own. I own 13 buildings in Montgomery that need torn down. But where do you find the funding for it?
Right.
I think there needs to be a mechanism or some type of a vehicle for emergency funding for those things, especially for small municipalities. Larger municipalities have their own economies and they have a little more money. But I had suggested at one time that maybe we do an extra tax like we did on the unemployment tax, if you recall, to get us out of debt. Do an extra tax for 5 or 10 years, or take the coal severance tax and take a percentage of that and put it in a dilapidated building fund for the cities, the small municipalities, to help clean these up. And you're right, Bill, the last part of your question was what does that do? How does that hamper you? What happens is your prime real estate is locked under a dilapidated building. So until you tear that building down, that land is locked. And if you're in a little municipality like Montgomery, we're kind of landlocked anyway.
Sure.
Every piece of flat land is used, so we need to uncover those locked pieces of property.
Right. Was a practical matter, is there, I'm sure maybe the first part of that phase is to try to encourage property owners to do the right thing and you know, proceed with their own demolition. And I guess from there,
Absolutely.
then you have to try to progress in terms of government intervention in that process. But
Yes.
you know, has the city had any luck whatsoever in getting property owners to,
Yes.
you know, to try to clean up their own property?
Very good question. We have. We've had property owners, and here's the problem, Bill. Some of these properties are given down through the family and given down through death in the family and those type things. And these folks can't afford to tear them down either, because some of these are large buildings. So what they have done, what several of my property owners have done, and I have agreements that's we're working on now, they give that property to the city of Montgomery. Doing that, then I can pursue finances or ways to tear them down. Because they certainly don't have the money to do it. It's not that they want them to be there and be ugly. That family now doesn't have the wherewithal to tear them down. So we do have families that are very willing to say, you can have this property, and for your cost and for your taking the building down and all the costs you incur, you can have the property when you're done.
Right.
We have currently we have 3 property owners in Montgomery that have signed waivers that we can tear their buildings down because they don't have the wherewithal to do it. So property owners some are very very helpful, and then others once they move away it just doesn't really matter.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to need to take a quick break, and then we want to come back, Dave, and talk a little bit about some of the challenges in terms of the period of the post-departure of WVU Tech from Montgomery, and some of the ways that you've sought to meet that challenge. So we're going to take a quick break and be right back to talk to the Honorable Mayor of the great city of Montgomery, Mr. Greg Ingram, joining us here today on the Capitol Report. We'll take a break and be right back. Stay with us.
Stay tuned. The West Virginia Capitol Report will be right back. The West Virginia Capitol Report is brought to you by the AFL-CIO of West Virginia, Cucumber & Company, online at cucumberandcompany.com, and Mark Hunt & Associates, toll free at 800-554-1280. From under the Golden Dome in Charleston, this is the West Virginia Capitol Report.
Welcome back to the Capitol Report as we continue our discussion with Greg Ingram, the mayor of the city of Montgomery. And David, you're up next with a question.
Bill, thank you. Obviously, when West Virginia Tech left Montgomery, there was a void. And, of course, Senator Laird was in the Senate at that time, and he helped fill that void through Senate Bill 656. And since Senate Bill 1001 has done some more, which has allowed certain entities to enter the Montgomery area and provided provisions for that. Kind of tell us what you think of that bill and how it's been instrumental in helping you in your second term and first term as mayor of Montgomery.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. First of all, Senate Bill 656 is probably one of the most important pieces of legislation for the city of Montgomery, and I say that from my heart. When West Virginia Tech left, we in Montgomery felt betrayed. We felt robbed, and a lot of people thought it was the end. And along came a senator at that time by the name of Bill Laird, who introduced a bill called SB 656, which became law under Governor Tomlin. That bill set up parameters for some major players in the state of West Virginia to come together and try to rebuild Montgomery. And it was a team effort, and it put people together. It mandated that people come together. There was a time after Senator Laird was not in office that program fell on some deaf ears. And through Mayor Cavalier and myself, Mayor Cavalier of Smithers and myself, we pushed really hard to get the development office and to bring that back to life. Since that happened, we have been meeting monthly, and we have made a lot of things come to pass in Montgomery from state entities that would not even know what was going on in Montgomery. But we all come to the table every month. We sit down, we talk about it. Department of Highways, the different departments of the state. There's so many of them, I can't remember them all, including the National Guard. They come and they sit down and talk. So we have the opportunity, and we have ears listening to us. And it was all as a result of SB 656. Well, in I believe it was 2019, they modified that bill just a little bit to SB 1001, which all it did was add some more municipalities to that area, which was all good for the areas that it added. But what it did do was it pulled some of the focus away from Montgomery. And Montgomery, Smithers, Pratt, Golly Bridge, those were the areas that had empty apartments. Those were the areas that had empty buildings and that thing. So we're very happy to help the rest of the valley, the Upper Kanawha Valley. I think the more the merrier, and those folks are welcome to the party. But as it stands right now, Mayor Cavalier and I are the two primary players, along with Eunice Bellinger at Bridge Valley Community Technical College. And we've gotten a lot established, Bill, thanks to what you did in 2017. I think it was 2017 or 2016. But that bill is still alive today.
Mayor, if you could update us a little bit, I understand, in the last session of the legislature, we have a very successful model in, I guess, Preston County, Kingwood, with the West Virginia Challenge Academy that has been highly successful there. And again, the Montgomery campus looked at as a potential location for an alternative site. Has that progressed, or what can you tell us a little bit about the status of that?
It absolutely has. Their first class will be October the 11th, and they plan to have probably 90 cadets. The last report that I received from General Hoyer and his group, they are fully staffed now. And by the way, that created 90 jobs, 80 to 90 jobs in Montgomery alone. And we have other businesses that are coming in to fill some of those voids. And I hear, probably not on a daily basis, but 3 or 4 times a week, of people that come up and thank me for the jobs because they got one of them. And I say, don't thank me, think it's a group of people. It's not just the mayor didn't do that. There's a whole group of people that made all these things happen, and I'm just so blessed and thankful that they're there. Mayor Higgins always used to say that Montgomery was so blessed because we had 2 colleges. We had West Virginia Tech and Bridge Valley Community Technical. Well, we're blessed again by having the Challenge Academy South there. We have all the banners up and the flags up, and I'm sure there's going to be some type of a large announcement and ribbon cutting for that, which that's their announcement to make, and I really don't know the date or time of that. But stay tuned to Montgomery's Facebook page, and we'll post it. But yeah, Bill, that's going to be a big part of the facade of Montgomery.
Absolutely.
Mayor, of course, that's big. And I also understand that in the next day or so, you have some announcements and cooperation with Amtrak, some cooperation with Ranger Scientific.
Yes, sir.
And I understand you and the mayor from Smithers have been quite active in a trails project.
Yes, we have. And that's a lot to remember in order,
Sure.
so you might have to remind me of all that. But we do. We started, the first year I became mayor, started negotiating with Amtrak on upgrading the station, because at that time there was some push and wanting to make Amtrak a daily run through West Virginia, the Cardinal. And so we started negotiating with Amtrak, and now it's finished now, $1.8 million upgrade to the Montgomery Amtrak station. We plan in the future to make that a regional station for long-term parking and the type of things that are just not offered in some of the other municipalities. But that was a great upgrade, was the Amtrak. The trails that Mayor Cavalier and I are working on has been about a 2-year project, and it will be a complete it'll be building new trails from the Tech Marina all the way through Smithers and up Cannleton Hollow, and it will go over and connect into what most people recall as tech trails up behind the old campus there. Hopefully that will segment and go over into some other trails that we're working on. We have several Fayette County Commission has come to the table, Kanawha County Commission has come to the table, and there's a lot of players in that. And again, it's a lot of people to make these things happen. And I can't remember your second question, but that's 2 of the 3.
The second question was the Ranger Scientific,
Okay.
which started back in the legislature a few years ago as well.
It did. It was a 2016 venture that fell upon some problems with the Environmental Protection Agency, having to make sure that their powder pill boxes or whatever you call them. Their ammunition place was all in good shape. So they backed up and they got all that taken care of, all the EPA stuff. So they have, I've been working with their CEO, Dan Perlson, now for probably a year and a half to bring their main offices and their training facility to Montgomery. They will have a small production facility there for casings and stuff of that nature, but there will be no explosives in Montgomery. That'll all be done down in Kanawha County. So we've had very good success with getting Ranger to come in, and again, it's been a lot of players, it's been a lot of people involved. Dan Perlson and I have probably spoken 2 or 3 times a week for the last year and a half, and we are going to have the USDA is going to make their announcement in the next few days in Montgomery for the guaranteed funds and everything to make that happen. So,
The West Virginia Capital Report is brought to you by the AFL-CIO of West Virginia, Cucumber and Company, online at cucumberandcompany.com, and Mark Hunt and Associates, toll free at 800-554-1280.
Well, welcome back to the Capitol Report. As we close out today's program, again, our thanks goes out to Greg Ingram, the mayor of the city of Montgomery. David, a lot happening in Montgomery and reasons to be optimistic about the future. To our viewers, thanks for tuning us in each week for the West Virginia Capitol Report. Have a good week and goodbye, everybody.
This has been the West Virginia Capital Report.